Welcome to Enlightened, the enlightened journey of life. I am your host, Jen Hamilton, and it is an honor to have you here. I am a conscious life coach and women's empowerment mentor, and I activate a potent level of self and soul inquiry with my clients, which initiates deep and lasting transformation in all areas of their lives. I am here for the full human experience, authentically and audaciously sharing my magic with the world. On this podcast, we're all about mastering life on the way to enlightenment. And as we are here having a human experience, we might as well embrace it all. We play in the space of what is real and tangible, just as much as we play in the space of esoteric and metaphysical. You'll be ignited by deep conversation, whether through my own personal musings, interviews with incredible thought leaders around the world, and everyday divine humans sharing their soulful stories. Thank you for being on this journey. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Enlightened Podcast. I'm your host, Jen, and I'm joined today by Samantha Khan. Samantha is a certified success coach for women, a yoga instructor, and experienced human resources professional. After a 10-year career in corporate, she opened Lighthaus Coaching to help high-achieving but burnt-out women. Samantha works with clients one-on-one and in groups to help them reclaim their sense of self-worth and discover what a successful life truly means so they can stop grinding day in and out and start enjoying their life and stepping into their greatest purpose and potential. She incorporates energetic and shamanic practices with a modern mindset twist into her coaching to help clients access their subconscious minds and take back control of their beliefs, as well as rewrite narratives holding them back so they can truly access their unlimited potential. Samantha holds an undergraduate and master's degree in psychology, business, and human resources, and is a certified life coach and yoga teacher. So without further ado, let's dive in. Samantha, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
Thanks for having me, Jen. I'm great. I'm so happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show, and I'd love to hear from you. What is it that inspired you to get up this morning?
Ooh. Well, yesterday was my birthday, so
Oh,
I
happy
feel like
birthday.
thank you. Yeah, I just feel a new energy. I woke up, reflecting kind of on my last 32 years and felt really inspired by that. So, yeah, that's what motivated me.
I love the energy of birthdays. Like you just
Mhm.
you just feel something different and everyone's just like throwing so much love at you. I love birthdays.
Yeah. No, I do too. I love celebrating anything, and honestly, like, it's not because I feel like I need to be celebrated, but I just like bringing people together with that energy. So, last night, I'm also a yoga instructor, and I taught a yoga class that was packed with both friends and new people, and so that was just so nice to see, to bring people together in community. That's one of my favorite things, and I think it's why I love, like I said, celebrating just about anything.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. I love getting people together as well, especially over food. You know, food's
Yes.
such a big part of my love language. And yeah, bringing
Mhm.
people together, connection, community, food, gathering, it lights my soul.
100% agree. Yes.
Yeah. So as a success coach, tell us how you got into this work and what sort of magic do you bring to the world?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I was just having a conversation with someone about this, and I think it really just starts with, I come from an immigrant family. I thought that there was one way to be successful, and that was either be a doctor, an attorney, or a quote unquote business person. And I didn't fit into any of those molds, so I had to make my own, and I felt for a long time very ashamed about it. Like, there was something wrong with me, that I couldn't follow the path that was set forth for me, that I wasn't ever going to be successful. And it wasn't until I started defining my own version of success and starting to feel a sense of worthiness as being inherent versus earned, that my life started to kind of fall together in a more of a natural, organic way. I felt like I could be less of an imposter in my own world, my own life, and start showing up more authentically, and seeing that shift for myself made me just want to do it for everyone else. So I love working with women who have been through a similar path, who maybe are high achievers, been going after that same version of success that we're sold as the one, and really just debunking that myth, allowing them to see that there's many ways to be successful and that it's totally subjective. And I think the magic that I bring to the world is creating really deep relationships and giving people permission to think and feel deeply in a safe space. It's something that I had always been looking for, and now I love creating it for others.
I love that so much. And, as you mentioned, success is subjective. It's
Mm.
completely different. Like your version of success will be different to my version of success, different to every person that's listening. Everyone has their own different version of it. I'd love to hear,
Mhm.
what is your version of success?
Yeah. I think my version of success is creating a full and whole life, right? So
Mm.
one that isn't just one-sided in terms of all focused on relationship or all focused on work, but one where you feel like you get to authentically be yourself and do the things that light you up, where you can show up, um, and really, what are the words I'm looking for here? Really experience your life to the fullest, where you can make decisions each day that support the person that you want to be holistically, and not just feeling like you're constantly making trade-offs, and feeling a little bit miserable or missing out on the other things that you love because you're so hyper focused on being this certain version of success that you think others want.
Yeah, no, I love that. What have you found, especially working with women, where does worthiness come in, and where does worthiness either play a part or hinder, a woman's version of success?
I think it underlies everything. It's really like the messaging we get from the time we're young children through adulthood. And if we don't feel our worthiness is inherent, we will constantly have to try proving it to others, right? And the way we prove it to others is by going after versions of success that they think is appropriate versus what we think is appropriate, by people pleasing, by sacrificing our wants and needs in order to give to others. So I think it's absolutely just sort of the undercurrent that lies underneath all of those things, right? And it causes us to accept less. It causes us to feel like we need other people who maybe don't support us or don't treat us the best. We keep them in our lives because we feel unworthy of finding more. So it's a huge difference when we start coming from that place of our worthiness is inherent, right? That there is no thing we can do, say, or try that's going to make us unlovable, right? Because at the end of the day, it's worthiness of what? Worthiness of love, right? So, can
Mm.
we be loved by people? And the answer is always yes. You're always, no matter what, for men or for women. And I think, so many of us have forgotten that over time through our own conditioning, through our own experiences, whether they're just sort of, everyday experiences or traumatic experiences, through listening to other authority figures. So we've forgotten it, and I think a lot of our work is remembering that inherent worthiness to help ourselves heal.
It's so true, isn't it? And it's such a journey. It definitely has been in my life, and having my own business and having to, you know, essentially decide what success is for me, because I'd modeled it from, so many other areas of my life before, and especially,
Mhm.
working for other people, but mostly working for men as well. And it's very different for men. I feel that, women are always striving to be something, do something, whereas men just are, and I guess we want to close that gap. Essentially, we want to, as women, be able to go, well, of course, we're just as worthy. We are just as entitled to feel all of these things. We don't have to prove ourselves. And I think that's such a journey, because, as you said, when we're born and when we're young, we're born into these conditions and these systems and these ways of being that form our belief systems, that then have us thinking that we do have to prove ourselves, or that we aren't worthy. And then we have proof of that too. We have sexism in the workplace. there's wage gaps as well. I'm not sure about over in the States where you are, but definitely in Australia, there's been issues with wage gaps. A lot of, unfairness around, women entering the workforce
Mhm.
before having children. Women's age is being questioned. It's like, oh, well, if you're around childbirthing age, you're not really suitable for this company because you might go off and have children and leave us in the
Mhm.
lurch, kind of thing. So it's like we've drawn, the short straw. But I definitely feel like there's this movement within women to say, hang on a second, this is not okay. Like, even though we don't want to necessarily, have the same roles as men, we want to have equal rights. So I always say equal rights, not equal roles. We can have different roles in the household, we can have different roles in society, but we still get to have equal rights.
Yeah. Yeah, equal opportunity, I think. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. I think my perspective on it is there's unworthiness present in men and women, right? And maybe we react differently. There's expectations put on men and women differently, like the sort of more feminine um, characteristics we expect not to see in men, right? We in the US, like there's a lot of rhetoric around men who cry or are super emotional or less masculine and therefore unworthy or less attractive, which I don't subscribe to, but they have their own sort of hurdles to overcome. So I'm not saying that they don't. I My background previously before starting my coaching business was in human resources, so a lot of experience crafting a workplace that is suitable to create equal opportunities. But to your point, there's a lot of that still exists, whether it's in smaller companies that don't have human resources or just there's subtleties to it, right? So whether it's sexism or um, just the wage gap, like people just don't know all the time. And it's not necessarily malicious, but it still exists. It doesn't mean that it's not there. So what I
Mm.
see is that the expectations for women is, and especially again, coming from an immigrant family, like there was a huge focus. I have three sisters, so we're all girls. There was a huge focus put on your career and being career focused, being able to support yourself at all times, and being really successful in that part of your life. And then at the same time, every other sort of outlet I could have absorbed, um, you know, or been socialized by, I got the same messages of I have to look pretty. I have to look done up. I have to be a good cook, have a beautiful home, like all, some of these things that you can giggle at when you think about it. But as, a young adult, I was like, oh, I have to do all of these things. So how do I
Mm.
balance all of this? And yeah, it just felt like I was kind of failing at every every piece of it. I couldn't juggle all of those plates in the air at the same time. And um, I think it definitely contributed to feeling like I was unsuccessful or unworthy of love because I couldn't do all of the things. I couldn't be the best at everything.
Yeah. Was there a catalyst for you in your life, Samantha, that made you realize that, like, this is not okay? Like, this version of myself that I'm living, I'm not living in alignment with my truth. I'm not living authentically and audaciously as myself. Was there a catalyst for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So in my late 20s, I went through definitely a struggle with depression and some toxic relationships. And it was, I think around the time I found myself in the second toxic relationship in a row, where I was wondering how I keep attracting these people, if this is going to be my life going forward, right? Like, is this just what I'm going to have to put up with? And um, you know, I looked around and I saw that I had achieved those things that I thought were going to make me successful. Like my career was taking off, I was doing really well, but I was showing up every day feeling like crap, like I was an imposter. And like I was just hiding every day that I had no idea what I was doing, but people kept showing me, like showering me with praise, that it seemed like I was doing a good job. I was getting promotions, I was getting pay raises. And I was thinking to myself, like, if I actually enjoyed this, if this was what I was supposed to be doing, shouldn't those things fill me up? Like I'm hitting all of those milestones I had set for myself. But I realized, like, emotionally, I was kind of at my rock bottom. I had really poor relationships with my friends, my family. I had the worst relationship with myself at the end of the day. I didn't feel like I supported myself. I felt like I was constantly fighting myself to um, achieve anything, and it was all based on around fear of failure. It was all based around what happens if I lose this? What if I, can't get to the next level? It was constant self-doubt. And I just didn't want to live my life that way anymore. It was causing a huge strain. And it was really when I hired my first coach, who wasn't even based around spirituality, but I hired her to help me kind of negotiate a new job offer. And we started talking about this idea of worthiness. And I just was kind of in shock. One, I was like, why? I don't want to. I don't want to talk about worthiness, because it immediately brought up so much emotion. And I had never considered what worthiness even really meant. So when we started talking about those things, I realized how much it shifted for me, and that was kind of the thread I needed to pull to get out of the situation that I was in. So I continued my practices there, and that helped me get into sort of the energy work and shamanic practices that I'm using now.
Tell us about the energy work and the shamanic practices.
Yeah, so I found I'll share my first experience with it and the person that I have apprenticed with for the last 3 years. So um, I missed a call for one of the coaching sessions I was on, but it was recorded. And in that recording, I met my mentor. She took us through a shamanic journey. Um, and as I was listening to it, I found myself in tears, like something had clearly just broken open in me. Just based on the energy of this recording. So as soon as I heard it, I knew that I needed to work with her, and that's shifted everything for me. So the shamanic practice that I utilize and that I've practiced with her um, that is a shamanic journey. So not not using plant medicine or anything, but really just most of our sessions are virtual. So it's using the shared energy that we both have to go into our subconscious, or go into my subconscious or my client's subconscious, and start using the visualization, powerful imagery, and metaphor to get to the bottom of sort of where the energetic ties might be that are holding me back.
Mm.
And it just has opened up so much creativity in me, so much creativity in my clients to be able to express what's going on, to be able to question and explore, really, like creating that safe space, I think. So it's been so powerful. And also through that have learned hands-on healing as well, and just channeling sort of source energy to help my clients release tension, and locked energy they might be feeling in their bodies, which has been an amazing experience as well. Um, and even through that have found myself experiencing as a client and as a practitioner past life regressions. So it's been really powerful. And if you would have asked me 3 years ago, like, would I have even believed this? I don't know. But it's so experiential, really. It's just like there's so much possibility when you utilize this work. And it's really just been learning and understanding the different sources of energy, crystal energy, Lemurian energy, Atlantean energy, and being able to incorporate that into these journeys, and be more intentional as I go. That has been super powerful.
Wow, that's incredible. I love hearing about this stuff. And I'm, yeah, right into, shamanic journeying and energy healing and all of that. And I love that we're bringing it forward more. I mean, if this was us talking about this, hundreds of years ago, we'd been burnt at the stake for this
Yeah.
conversation,
Yeah.
let alone
Yeah.
the practices. But I think, through our lives, having these experiences in our past lives and being able to bring them forward, we are going through this journey of remembrance to remember that we do have all of this inside of us. And, even though it's wildly uncomfortable to go through essentially, the start of our lives with unworthiness, ultimately that could be the catalyst to then go, I need to do this work on myself. I need to work with a shamanic healer, or I need to work with a coach or a therapist of some type. And then that then unlocks these things within us, and then that's when we find what we're passionate about. We find ways in which, we can support others through their healing. As you said, if
Yeah.
we said this 3 years ago, you wouldn't have believed it. And it's like you had to go through this whole journey of your life, going through, being in the US as an immigrant, going through all of the journey that you had, the expectations of you to succeed. Obviously, I assume it's in the eyes of your parents to succeed, as a doctor or an attorney, or a business person, having to go through all of that to then essentially find yourself through it. And I think that's the gold through this journey. And this is why I love people seeing people step into doing the work on themselves,
Hmm.
because it's like, as wildly uncomfortable as it is to go into the parts that sting, and they sting when we go into them, they can be
Yeah.
really, really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But in my experience, in my own personal experience and working with so many people, is that if it's actually more uncomfortable to stay stuck in the ways that you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you're kind of aware of it, or even like a little bit open to it, it's almost impossible to stay stuck, really. Right? Like
Yeah.
there's no going back in a way. So either you fight your way through it, or you deal with the uncomfortability or discomfort um, a little bit longer, right? Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything you just said. I mean, I'm thinking back to my experience that my parents, I know they had the best intentions, right? They wanted to keep me safe. They wanted to make sure that I was successful in society's eyes. And raising four daughters is no small feat, right? But um, there's the subtleties of it, right? And so you could be listening to this podcast and think to yourself, well, I've never had anything super negative happen in my life, so I can't relate. But it doesn't have to be like a big traumatic event that makes you feel a certain way. It could just be sort of your underlying life story of, I always wanted to be successful, so I didn't try the things that really lit me up because I was afraid of failure. And that's definitely
Mm.
part of my story, right? So now that I have done that work, I've felt that need. I've always known that I wanted to be a healer. I always thought that was part of me, but I was so afraid to say it, right? Especially coming, my whole family's in medicine too. So I come from a family of medical doctors and nurses. And to say that I'm a healer, I thought meant I was a fraud, right? Because I didn't have that
Mm.
background. And it was doing this work that made me realize the importance of it, right? So it's not just about your physical symptoms, or the way that we often treat um, different illnesses in modern medicine, but it's also the emotional side of it, right? The stress we hold on to, the energy we
Mm.
lock in our body that can really create physical ailments in your life that you can release through doing that
Absolutely.
work. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the medical industry and pharmaceuticals, they will treat the symptoms of it, but when we want to go deep and really just clear out the stuff so that we don't have the symptoms, so that we don't need the pharmaceuticals or rely on them as much, we have to go in and do the energy work, because that's the underlying place where it all exists. If we, I'm not sure if you're into metaphysical anatomy, but metaphysical anatomy is absolutely mind blowing. It really speaks into the fact that, for every ailment in the body, every kind of dis-ease, it's related to a feeling, a suppressed emotion, a past trauma, could even be past life as well. Like, we kind of have to play in the woo woo, because
Yeah.
that's where we know that this stuff is true and it's happening, and we're seeing so many shifts in this space. It's not just like, this old lady with like long purple hair told me this thing that I have to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're seeing the science behind it. We've got the likes of, Dr. Joe Dispenza bringing forward so much in the quantum space and through quantum healing that we literally cannot deny that this is working and that this is
Mm.
benefiting so many people. And, coming out the other side of doing this work, we're living, incredibly powerful lives. We're living in alignment with what it is that we are desiring. And to me, like, that's my version of success,
Yeah.
living aligned
Yeah.
to what it is that I desire at the time. And having the freedom to make choices, having the freedom to go to different places, or, financial freedom. And all that is on the other side of me doing my inner work. And, even
Mm.
though, it's an ongoing journey, essentially, like, as you said, once you're in it, you're kind of in it. But there's also downtime that you can take for integration to let
Yeah.
things land, which is, as you would know, is, such an important part of doing any sort of work. And I even make sure, with my clients, when I work with someone one on one, like, I don't know if you have this saying over in the US, but we say here, we're not here to fuck spiders. And, it's basically, we're not here to fuck around. And I get, straight in there with clients, and we do, deep work. We get into the subconscious mind, we make massive change. But there has to be a time where life has to catch up to this new way of being and to these new beliefs, like, especially when we're going in there and we're rewiring neural pathways and, literally changing people's DNA through healing. There
Hmm.
has to be a chance for essentially the body and, the mind to catch up to this new experience. And that's such a powerful part of the process too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a necessary part. I think if we try to rush through our healing, like, you can get kind of addicted to it the same way you can get addicted to anything else, right? Like, let me have another spiritual awakening. I'm looking for that um aha moment. I need to go through the suffering in order to come out on the other side. But if you aren't allowing yourself the time and space to integrate it, then you're doing yourself a disservice, because those things are still going to keep coming back up until you can actually find a way to make them part of your manageable everyday life, right? To be able to recognize and to also, like, honor your experience, right? Because especially when I first started this work, there were so many times when I had something come up over and over again, and I thought I had dealt with it, and it led to just a lot of shame. Like, how am I back in the same spot? I'm going backwards. I've invested so much time and energy and money into my own coaching and my own betterment, and yet I'm repeating the same mistakes. And I realized how that was coming out of it, my ego as well, right? That I needed to be somewhere faster, that I needed to never make a mistake. And that's not what's on the other side, right? We're still human. We're still going to have moments where we get frustrated or we react in a certain way that doesn't feel in alignment, but it's coming back to that alignment quicker. It's giving yourself grace. It's giving yourself patience, that I think is so important, and the biggest lessons there too, right? Because um, we can change. Like, we have the ability to change our personality. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this all the time, right? That it's not fixed, but it
Mhm.
does take time, to your point, for our body, for our mind, our ego to finally catch up and accept that change as well. And just slipping up or making a mistake doesn't ever um, have to mean that you have failed, have to mean that you have gone backwards.
100%. And this is the thing as well. And I see people get stuck into this trap. And I know that I've definitely been there before myself, is that when you're doing any kind of inner work, it's not the invitation to bypass the feelings or the experiences that the human life offers you.
Hmm.
In fact, you want to be able to go into the sticky parts because you're equipped with the tools to be able to handle it and be like, do you know what? I'm just going to sit in my shit right now. I'm just going to be in my, in like my rough times, because I know that this is the magic. I'm okay here. I'm safe here. It's actually safe for me to just sit and feel unworthy or worthless at the moment, because I know that there is something that has to move through me. There is a message in here that is going to show me where it's come from. And that is going to be my invitation to heal. And like, this is one of the biggest things that I see, especially in different, sort of spiritual communities, is just the bypassing that happens, and I want to shout it from the rooftop, stop bypassing the feelings. And literally why, this podcast is called Enlightened, because it's the enlightened journey of life. We don't want to just get to enlightenment, because it's like, okay, cool. Now what? Like, if we're human, we're here to live life,
Hmm.
and we don't want to just say, oh, well, I'm too spiritually advanced because I've sat with plant medicine enough times, or I use these crystals, or I do this. We still want to get down and dirty and be in our stuff. And one of the things, I'm quite open about, especially with my clients and in my online community, is that I'm very transparent about my stuff,
Yeah.
because, let's normalize it. Let's make it, widely known that even as practitioners, even as people that support others in their healing journey, we still have to be in our stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes it's easy to get triggered by clients too, right? Especially when you're coaching on them on the same things that you've been through, and you
Yes.
notice any resistance. It's like, how is this not working right now? Um, but 100% agree. I mean, it seems like there's always this rush to get beyond the emotion, and sitting with emotion can be so uncomfortable. I don't know if this is like something that is more prevalent in the US than anywhere else, but what something I have noticed, especially in US culture, is just like, you push forward, you get through it, like you grin and bear it, you like go back to the grind and don't let anyone else know what is going on behind the scenes, right? Like, that is definitely a mentality that I grew up with. And I felt like for my whole life I was wearing these masks constantly. I couldn't, show, especially in a corporate setting, any any emotion really about anything. And then to top that off, I was in human resources, where it's kind of, you are the steward of culture for an organization, and you have to be on board and get other people on board. And that was a really tough role for me to play in a lot of ways, because I was emotionally exhausted most of the time. I would come home and not understand why I felt like so frustrated or so tired, physically tired. And it's because I'm constantly wearing these masks where it doesn't feel like I can share my shit. It doesn't feel like I can experience it. I just have to go on to the next thing. And, maybe I'll catch a break sometime later on in life and I can process through that stuff, but it's not now. It's not necessary. Focus on the task at hand. Right.
Yeah.
And move forward. Yeah. So totally agree. And I don't know if this is something just in my family, but I think emotion scared my parents a lot. Like, there's can be a lot of negative connotation, and just generally in society, like the emotional woman, right? An angry woman, um, a, a sad woman, a vengeful, whatever the emotion is, can carry such negative connotation that you just kind of get the message growing up, like, I never want to be that, right? I never want to be angry. I never want to be
Mhm.
upset. I never want to be sad, because if I am, then again, I think that pushed me towards, like, I'm unworthy of love. No one's going to love me, because, who's going to love a angry or sad or upset woman? I need to only show those positive emotions. So sitting in your shit, it
Mm.
feels like you need to either push through it or logic your way around it, right? Like, use your logic brain to try to describe it and unpack it and um, create a story around it, rather than just sitting
Yeah.
with it. Yeah, experiencing
Yeah.
it and then letting it pass. We create these stories around it we feel we need to attach to.
Oh, massively. We're so creative when it comes to the stories we make up in our minds.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I've realized in my journey, and I think you touched on it before, Samantha, is that, our parents did what they did with what they had and what they
Hmm.
knew based on their culture and their upbringing and their version of the world as well. And one of the biggest parts of my journey is, forgiving myself for, any anger or resentment that I held towards my parents, and forgiving them,
Hmm.
you know, and just realizing like and especially now that I'm a parent, I can understand this from such a different level, because I look at my kids sometimes, I'm like, fuck, I've got kids. Like, when did that happen? I'm a mother, and with them, I call myself, I say that, I'm a vessel and a tour guide. Like, I got them here and I can show them around, but ultimately they get to live their human experience. And it's bloody hard not to control their experience as well, because you
Mm.
know better for them, because you've been around here longer, and you want the best for them. But that is in my view of the world, and every generation that comes through, everything is changing. Like, our parents didn't have access to life coaches and the therapists and the online courses and the programs and shamanic healing the way that we do, especially in the Western culture. you know
Hmm.
they didn't have access to that. That wasn't a thing, and we are just so lucky that we have landed in the technological era, where
Hmm.
we've got this magical thing. We've got Zoom, and we've got these podcasting apps, and we've got videos, and we've got Wi-Fi, and we've got all of these ways in which we can connect with other people, and find our tribe, and, you know, validate our experience essentially by going, "Oh my gosh, you're like me. Okay, cool. What are you into?" kind of thing.
Yeah.
Instead of that, but that really lonely journey. I can't imagine what it was like for, and there would have been people, in our parents' era that, um, were into the same stuff that we were into, but it wasn't as widely known, and it was probably,
Yeah.
shunned as well from some communities or even religion to think this way.
Hmm.
And we've got access to all of this at our fingertips, and we have decided that, hang on a second, if working in the corporate world, if working in HR, or working in whatever industry doesn't align with me, I'm going to start my own business. Whereas in my family system, that was not safe. You don't have
Yeah.
businesses fail. Like, that is not
Yeah.
okay. Abort mission. And so now it's a very different way of being. And sometimes I have to remind myself that my children are going to experience a very different way of being compared to what I've grown up in and what I'm showing them around in my version of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like the internet is still relatively new to our parents. Like it's only existed for
Yes.
probably less than half of their lives. Even conversations around therapy are relatively new, and getting help in that way. And that's still from a sort of medical science backed, modern medicine rather, approach, right? So without even talking about the energetic healing or shamanic healing, and so it it's definitely for me. I think a similar experience, that there's a lot of forgiveness I've had to direct towards my parents, for doing the best that they could with the resources that they had, and giving them grace, because as a child, you don't see that. You just see your experience. And you are kind of isolated to your family experience before you go off on your own. And you think that, you know everything in a way, based on that small subset of people that you've spent your life growing up with until whenever it is that you decide to leave. So yeah, it's all you know for a long time. And especially if you it either haven't done the work, um or going through the work now, it might feel like there's a lot of resentment towards your family, or just misunderstanding of what life should be, maybe resentment towards yourself because you direct it inwards versus directing it outwards. But um absolutely agree that, yeah, all to say that there's a lot that, I guess I would sum it up to say, I know that when I do have children, that there will be a similar experience. It's unavoidable, but it doesn't have to be, um, it doesn't have to ruin relationships, right? And I am excited to
Yeah.
parent slightly differently than my parents did for me. Um, but I'm also excited for them to spend time with my children and be grandparents and teach them lessons they taught me as well. So, yeah, long-winded way of saying
Yes.
it's I can absolutely agree. And you know, it's this I think seesaw kind of finding forgiveness for others and for yourself. Um, and you can't really
Mm,
have one without the other, right? Because whenever you're
that's
holding
so
on to that
true.
pain, yeah, whenever you're holding on to that pain, whether it's towards yourself or towards someone else, like it's always towards yourself, right? It only hurts you. So, yeah.
Yep, it's so true. Yeah, and you're right, like, they have to coexist together, that self-forgiveness and then the forgiveness of others. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from you, Samantha. What is it, you don't have to mention any names, but can you think of a particular client that you've worked with that's had a really significant shift in their life that, has come from, doing this work with you?
Yeah, yeah. I had one client who came to me feeling incredibly unconfident in her ability to find a job. And she was overqualified for a role in human resources, but wasn't able to land a job. She was feeling like it was never going to happen. And she was absolutely accepting less than what she wanted to because she thought it was the only thing available to her. So we worked together for 3 months to um, help her uncover different possibilities. And a lot of the work that I end up doing with my clients is around their inner child because that is such a powerful archetype for the rest of the way you live your life, right? So, um, we worked on her inner child and really uncovering where she was shown she wasn't worthy, that she wasn't able to speak up, and also in her current life where she's closing herself off to possibilities because she feels unworthy of them. And it was through that she was able to start putting together a resume that actually um, shared her qualifications in a more honest and kind of owning her worth type of way, and allowed her to land a job that she never thought she would have gotten otherwise, and asked for a 40% increase and get it. So I was incredibly proud of her. But that kind of work that I've seen in my own experience, but also working with these clients where you're doing the inner work, you're changing the way you feel about yourself, and it might feel very intangible at first, but it has the ability to create these massive shifts outside of um, in your outside world as well. So, yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And do you see women all around the world? It's all via Zoom, is it?
Yes, right now working all via Zoom. So, mostly been in the US and then some in the UK, but yeah.
Amazing. So we'll link to, yeah, how people can work with you in the show notes. Any words of wisdom that you would like to impart on our listeners?
I would say, and I will say this over and over again, that your worthiness is inherent and you are responsible for only your feelings. So, just a reminder to allow yourself the opportunity to um, I just think it's so empowering when you take responsibility for yourself. I was going to say this earlier, but when you're sitting in your shit and you're feeling really awful, once you can shift from this is awful, this is terrible, shift out of that victim mode and find yourself in a place where you get to parent yourself and rewrite your stories, it is so empowering. So just remember you are worthy, and however many times you need to repeat that to yourself, and that there is another side to it. And when you start taking responsibility for yourself, you generate great power in yourself. You have the power to create worlds beyond your greatest belief. So, yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you. And Samantha, one final question before we wrap up. What is the meaning of life to you?
Ooh, great question. I think I would have to say for me, it's to create experience and to grow, right? To
Mm.
to grow beyond where you've been. I'm a lifelong learner and I love learning new concepts, learning new things, and integrating them into my life. And I just think my life would be meaningless if I didn't have that. So yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Amazing. Thank you so much, Samantha, for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been such a pleasure and loved chatting with you about all of these topics.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I hope you love the Enlightened podcast, and the biggest compliment you can give me is subscribing to this podcast, sharing it, and leaving a rating and review. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. My handle is @JenHamiltonOfficial, and the podcast handle is enlightened_podcast. You can also find the video version on YouTube on my channel. Just search Enlightened and don't forget to hit subscribe. Have a beautiful day and enjoy living the enlightened journey of life.